Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, some of you might be coming off national sales meetings that you all got together, I would say February, March timeframe. And you might have had some team building activities, some presentations, some training, some networking, which is great. Everyone's enjoying being face-to-face. But I would ask you what the common theme was, what was woven throughout the meeting in order to bring you all together, to create that cohesion, that connectivity. And a lot of times what I'm seeing and what I've experienced in my 20-year corporate career was alcohol. And, some of you might be thinking, well, Karen, how does this tie into sales and sales performance? And my guest shares that very clearly. And he is the founder of 1 Year No Beer, Andy Ramage. And Andy has recently celebrated 10 years with no beer. I came across Andy in the summer when he was on the Rich Roll podcast, and I recently heard him on Dr. Ranjan Chatterjee, and he got me at the right time. So in August of last year, when he was explaining what a middle laner was, and that's somebody who, drinks, doesn't have a dependency issue, but, drinks regularly, has a few drinks here, there, nothing crazy, but they've been doing it for a long time. And we think it's not a big deal, but over time, what it does to our sleep, to our mental performance, to our brain, our body, our immune system from neurotoxins, our performance, our health, our mindset, so many things. And he just got me at the right time that I actually took some of his advice and I stopped drinking. And I don't know where this is going. Fully transparent. I'm enjoying and I'm seeing a lot of the benefits he's sharing from performance and salespeople. When you get in front of your customers, a lot of it is the energy. How are you showing up? How are you preparing? What's the clarity in your mind? How are you feeling? What are you bringing to the table authentically, spiritually? And a lot of this is removed when we always rely on alcohol. Even some of the stories we shared was when we're at these sales meetings and leaders are drinking, and it sets the tone for those who perhaps are not drinking, people that have dependency issues, women who are trying to get pregnant or are pregnant, and it just creates this environment that we all have to be part of something that maybe some of us don't want to be part of. And so all this really is, folks, is to invite you to look inward and look at the relationship you have with alcohol and look at the impact it's having on you. And so his recommendation is, can you just create some distance with it? So his challenge is 30 days. Stop drinking for 30 days and just see the impact it has on your mental clarity, your patience, your focus, your health, your workout routine, your diet, your finances. And see if there's contrast, see if there's benefit, and if what do you have to lose? And he says he guarantees that there will be. And I can tell you, in the 7 months that I've done it, 100% across everything he said, I've experienced it. And I think part of it is just becoming aware and being an observer of yourself and seeing, like, what am I truly capable of here? And he refers to it as, your superpower. And when you remove it, you really highlight and illuminate your superpowers that might have been covered or hidden with alcohol. Because for most of us, you start drinking in high school. And if you're in your 30s and 40s, you haven't really stopped. And so, anyway, I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. I was open to it. The timing was right for me. I don't know where this is going. This is me for right now. And I'm enjoying it. And I'm open to see and continue to be, what do they say? sober curious. That's what you call it. But take a listen, whether you're a sales leader, a business owner, and just see if any of this resonates with you, with no judgment and just opportunity to look inward and see, am I willing to give this a try? Am I willing to see if there's another gear that I'm not taking advantage of that's there for me? And perhaps alcohol is what's stopping me from doing it. And I think when we all look at, New Year's resolutions and we think about, exercise and diet and mindset and meditation, and we're getting all these great activities to put in place. The one thing, and this is what he shared as well, that he didn't consider, which was the keystone or the linchpin that tied it all together, was alcohol. And a lot of people just aren't ready to do it, so they steer away from it because it's habitual. It's something they've always done. It's comfort, and those who are courageous and brave might listen to this and look inward and say, you know what, what's 30 days? I'll give it a shot. And if you do take on his challenge and stop for 30 days, let us know, what you learned about yourself, what you gained as a result of that. And perhaps just your relationship might be different. Even if you're more intentional when you have a drink, maybe you stay off it. Who knows? And this is not a podcast to tell you what to do. It's just to invite you to look inward and just see, as always, is there something I can be doing to further increase my performance that allows me to show up as my best, true, authentic self? So I hope you enjoy it, take something away from it. And thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you next time. Well, I am delighted to bring Andy Ramage to the podcast. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to having some fun on this podcast today.
Yes, actually, absolutely fun. I would say wisdom, unlocking some awareness. There's going to be tons of things. But I first want to say congratulations for you on just passing your 10-year on your mission of 1 year, no beer. And it's tenfold that now.
Yeah, which is really exciting. And it was never meant to be a 10-year thing. It was only ever meant to be a 28-day break that just grew and grew and grew and grew. And here we are 10 years later, and there's no stopping me.
That's good. Well, keep going. You're like that rolling stone gathering moss, but in a good way. So good. Well, I want to start by saying, first of all, my world is sales and corporate sales and culture. And I do go in and I do training. And the question I get asked, especially for students in sales, is the number one question is, how do I become better at sales? Like, what does a great salesperson look like? And I can tell they're waiting for, a great negotiator, someone who can close, someone who's really effective in discovery. And when I share with them, someone who prioritizes sleep and exercises and what kind of growth, mindset, do you have a growth mindset? And I can see them looking at me like, I think she misunderstood the question.
Yeah.
And so, this is for me. And I firmly believe that all these qualities make you a better person. And indirectly through that, you become the better salesperson. But the one area on that list that often gets missed is alcohol. And so what would you say? Do you agree with, that kind of list of things that aren't really sales related but more uplifting of the person? And why in your experience do you think that alcohol doesn't make that list for some reason or other?
Yeah, I think it's this cultural blind spot that we have to alcohol. But back to your point, you're absolutely on the money with that. Like sales is all mindset. I went away and studied degrees and master's degrees in positive psychology and coaching psychology to understand how our brain worked. And what we know is that explanatory style, i.e., the things that we say to ourselves about a rejection, for example, in sales, is everything. The story that we tell ourselves about that rejection allows us to either bounce back really quickly and get the next sale, or we crumble and give up. The two extremities. So therefore, what are we doing? We're doing these mental gymnastics all the time. It's a mindset game. So if we're not physically vibrant and well rested and well replenished and slept, for example, to do the mental gymnastics that we need to bounce back and be articulate and close the deal, is going to be much harder. Now, if you think of it like that, which clearly you do, which is brilliant as far as I can see, what does alcohol do? It absolutely destroys our mental health, first and foremost, and it destroys our sleep. Does those two things, even as an average drinker. Those one or two drinks in the week with clients or a couple more at the weekend with friends, like destroys our sleep, destroys your inner world. Therefore, when you meet with those moments of tension points as a salesperson and you need to be able to perform those mental gymnastics to bounce back quicker, you can't do it because you're under that cloud of those one or two drinks and poor mental health and poor sleep. Therefore, for me, and I go into a lot of corporates as well and do a lot of training, the two things I always talk about are sleep and alcohol. And alcohol is number one because alcohol destroys your sleep. So if you remove alcohol, for me, it is a sales superpower. So I'm like, that should be up front and top of the list, but no one wants to go there because everyone's embarrassed by it or they think it's going to be stigmatized. Therefore, they'll dance around the edges. I think just get straight in there and go after the foundational like pillar of sales for me is to remove alcohol, which is a lot of people listening to this might think, yeah, but that's impossible because how will I meet clients? And maybe we'll dig into that as well.
And you said the word they're embarrassed, and I would say there's probably some shame as well there. But what I'm hearing is you're almost leaving it up to the individual salesperson to make this choice for themselves, so that they have to kind of be strong going into the situations. But what are your thoughts on leadership and the CEO and the visionary behind the organization embedding this in the culture of saying, hey, when we are getting together for our sales meetings, for our corporate, bringing people together, like for my 20 years, the common thread was alcohol. So what other alternatives can we do that still drives inclusivity, collaboration? People still post pandemic, they want to get together, they want to be part of something, but knowing what you just said about, needing that sleep, needed to be grounded to have the clarity to have these conversations, to move the needle. We are kind of, it's that we're crossing out the lines, like we're not giving them the space or the environment to thrive.
This is so true. And I've looked at this a lot. And I think a lot of this comes down to a lack of awareness, is the truth of it. So it's not that our leaders and CEOs and HR teams are doing these things deliberately by organizing a lot of events around alcohol. They're just completely unaware of the knock on consequences of those few drinks to the performance of their staff. And I think this is where we all get caught in a trap. There's been this black and white thinking around alcohol for so long, which is you've either got a problem or you haven't. And if you haven't got a problem, then it's fine. But my argument is totally the opposite. I'm always talking to the middle lane. I'll define that and I'll come back to the question. And the middle lane being all the people that drink averagely, the one or two in the week, two or three more at the weekend, the odd binge. So the middle lane sits in between one end, which is those that identify as alcoholic, dependent on alcohol, and the other end, which are those that are completely abstinent. Everyone in the middle is in the middle lane, whether they drink once a blue moon or they drink, a couple of drinks here and there, or a bit more heavy in that grey area. They're in the middle lane. And I think it's really important to define that because this lack of awareness just makes an assumption that those one or two drinks has no consequences. It has massive ramifications for performance. Therefore, I run lots of businesses and I've been involved in lots of businesses in the world of broking, which is heavily influenced by alcohol. And what I found is alcohol is the biggest destroyer of performance. Therefore, if I own a business, and I do, the last thing I'm ever going to do with my employees is encourage them to all go out and drink because I know it's going to destroy their performance, is one point. Second point is this: HR teams need to really start thinking, and the bigger organization, about basic human psychology. If the CEO turns up to one of these events and drinks, what message does that send to all the directors? It sends a message that says, I don't want to be thrown out the tribe. I want to be part of the in gang, therefore I need to drink. And what message does that send from the directors down to all the line managers? Well, I don't want to be thrown out the tribe. All the directors are drinking, the CEO's drinking, therefore I need to drink to stay in the group. What message does that send to those on the floor? Well, I don't want to get thrown out the tribe because the line managers are drinking and the directors are drinking and the CEO's drinking. So everyone ends up drinking. So to understand that basic psychology, what you do by creating a drinks night in your firm, you create a culture of social pressure where probably 50% of the people that end up drinking don't even want to drink. They're feeling pressurized to drink. Therefore, you destroy all of your performance of your staff. You put many of your staff in a pressurized situation they don't want to be in. For what? When you can socialize in a million different ways, it just takes a bit more effort. I'd go as far to say it's a lazy social event just to put a card behind the bar or create a drinks style night. Get creative. There's a million different things that you can do to get your companies together and cultures together and really come together in a completely different format. And if there's alcohol, they're great, but don't make it the upfront thing. Make it the back shelf thing, and maybe promote alcohol-free alternatives if there needs to be drinks available at these events. I'll give you a classic example. I went to a $1 billion media firm, and this beautiful firm showed me around. They had sleep pods, meditation spaces, mental health first aiders with their laminates. And then they taught me all about this wonderful stuff they were doing for mental health. And then I said, how do you get together and entertain and connect? They went, oh, that's easy. On a Tuesday, we have a free bar. It's called Thirsty Tuesdays. And we do the same on a Thursday, and it's called Thirsty Thursdays. And the CEO comes down, all their directors come down, and we have a drink. And I just looked at them and they looked at me. And then after the conversation we'd had, I think the penny started to drop. And I was like, I bet your mental health first aiders are really busy on a Wednesday and a Friday. And like I could see it in their eyes. It was like, what are we doing? This is completely nuts. When you get some distance from it, as I have now. So I'm fortunate I've had 10 years looking back in at elite performance. You realize that it's the number one killer of elite performance. So I think we need to think really carefully about how we get our companies, our groups, our employees together, and also really think as leaders what message we are sending. So I believe all leaders, including the CEOs, this is just my opinion, should show up and shine alcohol free, because that then gives permission to all the directors to choose whether they want to drink or not, which gives permission to the line managers, which gives permission to the floor workers. The CEO, the person at the top, should, in my opinion, always be alcohol free in those events. If you're going to have a drinks event, bold statement, but I'll stand behind it.
That is a bold statement, but good for you for standing by it. There might be some backlash. But a few things there. I do agree with you, Andy, that there is a lack of awareness. I don't think they're going in there, trying to push one side against the other. I do think it's like, and it's a bit lazy because when you think about the creativity from the leaders, but also inviting their team saying, hey guys, let's put our heads together. What would you like to see? Like that's empowerment, like when you can bring them together and it removes the social pressure because I feel when they're part of the solution, there's ownership, there's accountability, and you're going to get ideas and thoughts that you never would have gotten on your own.
So true. It's so true. And I think, coming back to this, also the world's changing a bit. Younger people are less interested. So I also think what you'll find if you've got a broader age range, there'll be a certain age range that are still stuck in that old cycle of we just socialize by drinking, whereas you might have a broader group and younger people that have got no interest in drinking. In fact, in terms of staff retention, attraction of top talent, it would actually put them off to be constantly thrown into an environment that was just all about alcohol. So, exactly that. Open it up, get excited about it. We want to get together. How can we get together? What are the types of things we could do together? That makes it much more inclusive and enjoyable. And if people still want to drink, brilliant. Have the option for them to drink. That's their personal choice. And if they want to go out together and get, completely wasted somewhere, brilliant. That's their choice. But I think the type of events that we put on now in the workplace, we really need to start thinking about more carefully.
Yeah, I would agree. And I actually had that as a question about the movement with the different, not only genders, but demographics. Because what I see is my demographics, like the 40s, they're choose a different lifestyle. But I find like the Gen Zs, the younger, they're just not, they're choosing not to start. We're choosing to reverse old habits, but they're choosing not to start. And I just think it's fascinating that I was at a consulting party at Christmas and they were all drinking this amazing drink. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, this is mocktail. I'm like, you guys are drinking mocktails?
Yay.
And I was like, I just loved it. I loved the freshness of it. And just that, they're not denying themselves opportunities of learning, of expansion, of self awareness that perhaps the 40, 50, 60-year-olds are because it's just what they've done their whole life. And they're in that going through the motions, just that habit. Well, this is just what we do.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I've got an 18-year-old daughter, doesn't drink. I'm married to a lovely Irish lady. She drinks. That's always been her choice. I love her and I totally respect her for that. So my children have pretty much grown up with both sides of the coin, as it were. And both of them, I've got 18 and 16-year-olds, don't really drink and not interested. And back to my point, they are uncomfortable being around people that are drinking or are drunk in truth. And I think we also have to remember that the messages that we're portraying, whether it be in the business world or in our personal worlds around alcohol, and I think very often it is the slightly older generation that are caught in that loop, as you said, that are now rethinking their relationship with alcohol. And that's basically what I'm all about. It's not anti-alcohol. It's just pro-awareness. I want people to be aware in that middle lane that the benefits that you can gain from taking a break are astronomical. For me, if I wind back the clock 10 years ago, I was a broker, I run my own brokerage. So couldn't be a more pressurized social job than that. It's about as boozy and, as client focused as it can possibly be. And, when I thought about taking a break from alcohol, everyone said my business would fold, right? No one's going to want to do business with a broker that doesn't drink. And the irony was I grew that business 7 times bigger in half the time because I was always on the ball. If I wind that clock back, I was 42 pounds heavier than I am now back then, stressed out all the time. I had no time. I was, my career had plateaued somewhat. I was starting to experience anxiety, full blown panic attacks. My sleep was poor. I was unfulfilled, unmotivated. On reflection, I was probably underperforming 50% of the time, even due to those couple of drinks in the week, couple more at the weekend that were destroying my sleep and my overall performance. So I was probably operating at 50% of what I was capable of, but I thought that was my 100%. And I was still very successful. I had a big brokerage and we were flying along and generating tons of income, but I knew something was up and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I tried everything, literally from ice baths to meditation to exercise, nutrition. Nothing would stick. I was inconsistent in my temperament, in everything I tried. It was the last thing I ever considered was alcohol as a middle lane drinker. But when I finally got the courage to remove it, and it wasn't easy, by the way, took me probably 2 years of trying and failing due to that social pressure that I faced in the broken world. When I finally got there, it just transformed everything. I lost the 42 pounds in weight. My body fat went from 35% down to below 10%, where it is today, 10 years later. My resting heart rate, 68 down to 42, got athlete fit again. Business 7 times bigger in half the time. My relationship blossomed. My lovely wife, that anxiety, full blown panic attacks vanished, never ever came back. I even had rosacea, which is pimply skin across my cheeks and nose. That's a chronic condition, told to take tablets for the rest of my life. Gone, never came back. Like everything felt better. My mental health felt better. My smile bounced back. I was able to start getting up earlier. I went back to university, having left school at 16 to become a professional athlete. I went back to university twice to do a degree and a master's degree before work because I had so much time and energy. Started movements that have inspired hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people at this stage, again, all before work, while still running the brokerage, fitter, faster, healthier, wealthier, loving life because of that break as a middle lane drinker. It is like a superpower. That's the main message that I'm always trying to get across.
A superpower. I love that. And what I heard you say before was how do you create distance from it? And just all those benefits you shared, like even the weight loss, 42 pounds, that's significant. The clarity, the performance, business wise, as health wise. But in sales, when we're trying to outbound somebody, 97% of our buyers are in that unawareness phase. They don't know we exist. They don't need our solution because they don't think they have a problem. And I feel that there's a overlay here in that I'm hearing all the benefits and oh my God, like your life is completely turned around. But to get people to stop or to pause and be open for a moment because they're in that unawareness phase, they don't know that there could be a better way. How do you get them to move from that unaware to aware so they can start and whatever, if they don't do the 10-year, but they just start perhaps examining their relationship with alcohol and leaning in and just saying like maybe there's something here, I don't know, but there's a willingness to learn more about it. How do you move those people from that unaware to aware so they can start experiencing some of, even if they experience three of the benefits that you shared, it would still represent significant impact in their lives?
Yeah, and these podcasts help. So a big part of what I do now is train coaches, executive coaches, life coaches, alcohol-free performance coaches. Big part of what I do. And in that training, we look at the stages of change model, which is the greatest, I think, behavioral change um, insight that we can gain from James Prochaska. And there's lots of different stages of change. And I like James Prochaska because actually he built that stages of change model because his dad actually was an alcoholic and would not receive any treatment. He was very wary of medical intervention, and therefore he watched his dad die. Prochaska was really motivated to understand how change works. And it transitions perfectly to what you're saying in terms of sales. So there's lots of different components to change. There's pre-contemplation, which is unawareness, into contemplation, which is awareness. And then you go into something that's preparation, preparing to change. Then you go into action, actually actioning the change. Then there's maintenance and termination. It looks like a loop, but it actually is an upward corkscrew because often it takes people 4 or 5 times around that loop before they make lasting change. But back to what you were saying and why that's relevant, moving from pre-contemplation, unawareness into awareness is an unbelievable part of change. It's huge. So how do we do that? Podcasts, for example, are a brilliant way. Hopefully people will be listening to this thinking, well, I'm an average drinker. I drink, the odd time or a couple in the week, couple more at the weekend, the occasional binge. I wonder if this conversation that we're having, I wonder, does that apply to me? I wonder, would I get some of those benefits if I took a break, such as better sleep, better skin, fitter, faster, healthier, create more sales calls, generate more business, be more consistent in my relationships? That's got to be worth a try, right? So for me, I've spent the best part of 10 years trying to inspire people to do this. I show up pretty much live on social media every day, just celebrating the wins, the joys, the bonuses, the benefits, to try and wake people up a little bit, just to take them from unawareness into awareness. So they might then prepare and then take action, such as taking a break. Like everyone can take a break, right? It's just a break, even if it's just 28 days. Why not gift yourself the opportunity to test this out for you? And if you have the lived experience of some of, if not all of those benefits, that would be such a powerful discovery to make, wouldn't it? Because here's one important thing about alcohol: we don't just drink for a year. Most people drink for decades, if not their entire life. They start drinking in their teens and never stop. So imagine if you're like me, I was underperforming by 50%. And imagine removing that block and getting your 100% back for the next 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, what would that transforms life? That's why I'm doing this. That is transformational in every single domain. So that's basically part of the overall picture of trying to take someone from unawareness into awareness.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. And I love the word transformational because it's just like if you can, first of all, I feel that like you have to be aware that I'm underplaying or I'm playing small or that there is a potential for more, that the like, God, I see other people doing this and I'm just settling for this. And so I feel there's got to be that whispering or that unsettling feeling inside. And then there's curiosity to lean in a little bit and go, let's just explore. Like, let's just see what this guy's all about. Even 28 days, I can do 28 days. But I think in anything, just back to your change management, is the pain of same. Like the pain of same has to be greater than the pain of change. So you have to get frustrated enough with underperforming, with not achieving your health goals, your fitness goals, being a present parent, being clear in your head. Like all those things have to be like, I want more. And then I think, like you said, but alcohol, there's a disconnect. People are like, A, they don't see it, or even maybe bigger is I see it, but I'm not prepared to give it up.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting conundrum for a lot of people because they might not be in that classic term addicted, dependent. But actually, if you said to most average drinkers, stop drinking for 90 days, it would strike, fear into their hearts, wouldn't it? So what is that? That's interesting to me. Why is it that we would be so scared to stop doing this thing? And I think if you feel any tension around that, that has to be a really good reason, in my opinion, to take a break. Because actually, it's got a grip over you that maybe you don't like or don't want. I certainly didn't like that in my life at any stage, whether that's the odd drink that you have. But if there's a real sense of, oh, actually, I'm not sure if I could do that, that's got to be a really interesting reflection for you to think as to why is it. And I think very often it's because it's so ubiquitous in our life that we just don't even consider like the effects that it has on us in terms of our performance and holding us back. It just shows up at every celebration, commiseration, day ending in Y. Therefore, we almost can't imagine a world where we're not half intoxicated every time we step outside the front door to go to any social event, or it's a bored or stressed. I mean, when you think about it from a broader context, it's absolutely insane where we've got to in our relationship culturally with alcohol. It's completely nuts. Therefore, in my opinion, and I'm completely biased, one of the best things you can ever gift yourself is a break from it, to have a look. What does life look like for you without it? And if it is one times better, two times, 10 times better, again, back to my point, like what an experiment for us to partake in.
I think, and when you label it as experiment, it's kind of got a freedom to fail as well, because you're like, this isn't forever. There's a willingness to try there. Um, and I hear what you say about marketing. Like when you look at the alcohol, it's everywhere. Like you said, funerals, births, communions, baptisms, like wherever you go, you're drinking, and so it's harder. It's harder because there's pressure everywhere, and I feel like it's expected. It's just that expect you show up, and the first question is, "What would you like to drink?"
So true. And also, alcohol is the only drug in the world. When you try and stop it, people will question you on it and even berate you for not taking it. I mean, that's completely nuts. Again, when you get some distance from it, like if someone showed up and said, I'm not smoking, people would pat them on the back. Or they said, oh, I've just
Mhm.
stopped taking heroin. Everyone would go, well, you're a hero. But if you rock up and say, I don't want to have a drink, they're like, what do you mean you're not drinking? Why are you not drinking? Like, what's wrong with you? Don't be such a lightweight. You were drinking last week. Why are you not drinking with me? Like, that is completely bananas when you think about it, isn't it? Like, what, like, why does everyone feel they've got an opinion around alcohol? And I think the truth is, it does hide something powerful. I think most people don't like it because it challenges their behavior to change. And you touched on that earlier. It's like, well, don't hold up that mirror to me. I don't want to see that mirror of you looking vibrant and healthy and energized and crushing it in your sales career because you're not drinking, because that forces me then to reflect on my own behaviors and maybe I'll have to make change. Therefore, I prefer it if you just stayed in the crowd and followed along with everyone else and kept drinking. So I think there's a lot of that in there. I think that's where a lot of that social pressure actually comes from. But when you get some distance from it, it's crazy. I'll give you a good example. This stuff builds really young. So I went to a party just recently, and a nephew of mine, he's 17, was drinking. In the UK, you can't drink until you're 18. So in theory, he shouldn't have been drinking, but he had a pint of beer in his hand. And I had my 0 0. And he caught wind of my 0 0. And he said, are you not drinking? And I said, no. And he went, oh, that's boring, right? And my girls thought this was hilarious, right? My two girls are in earshot of this. And I went, no, I haven't had a drink for 10 years. And he went, that's really boring, right? Totally done me. And then he finished me off with, I bet you're fun at parties. And he sort of walked away. But it was hilarious, to be fair. And I take it in good spirit. But it did still portray a really powerful message. Even at that young age, already those beliefs about alcohol's role in our society are already formed, that to drink is what is fun, cool, and sexy, and to not drink is boring, and I think that's that cultural shift that I'm really working hard on. For me, actually, all the fun lives on, as I call it, the fun side of the island, which is the alcohol-free side of the island.
Yeah, it's so true. Oh my god, I had a little aha there with what you said about just, people don't challenge. If someone said, I've been heroin free for 40 days, they're not throwing a syringe in their way and peer
Yeah,
pressuring them. That why is it alcohol? Like, because it does that, and I would fall guilty to that. I would immediately be like, oh god, this is, why did you come then? That's so bad. That's just me totally being vulnerable and honest outside here, but I see the other side of it for sure. But I think when it's easy. I heard someone say before, it's, oh my God, you can't read the label from inside the jar.
that's the one. Yeah,
And so when you're inside it, you have a different appreciation, a different perspective. But from the outside, it is weakness, it is boredom. It's like you suck. But it's like if you can get distance, and I feel like in life, we need contrast or distance or whatever you want to paint it to. Only then do we realize, you know what? God, there is some benefit here, but you have to step out, because when you're in it, you're too emotionally connected in anything. But once you step outside of it, you might start realizing, wow, I notice things about myself, my performance, my temper, anything. But we don't give ourselves permission to kind of slow down and be brave and take that maybe 28-day, whatever that starting point is for you.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think something we also need to remember is that we're all so beautifully different. So back to the coach training that I deliver, we have a thing called the map is not the territory, which is a real famous sort of saying from the world of NLP as well that I train everyone in. And it's brilliant for sales training as well. I trained all my brokers in this as well. And what the map is not the territory means is that no one sees objective reality because we've all got our own unique map of the world, which is made up of our beliefs, our past history, our traumas, our upsets, our successes, our failures. And it's the same with alcohol. Everyone's got a completely different relationship with alcohol. The mistake almost everyone makes, unless they've been trained, is to think that everyone's got the same map. Therefore, everyone's having the same experience with alcohol when they're not, because we're all having a different experience with it. So for me, it got to the point, and you spoke about this earlier, where the pain of drinking was enough to wake me up to the fact that actually I don't want this in my life anymore. The anxiety, the tiredness, and whatnot. So I was ready to make that change. Whereas my wife, for example, has got a completely different map of the world. So her experience of alcohol, totally different to mine. Didn't affect her in the way that it affected me. Therefore, she was less motivated to make that change. So I think it is an important message to get out there whilst we're having this beautiful conversation that everyone's so different. We're wonderfully and beautifully unique and different. We've all got our own maps of the world. So if you are thinking of making this change, it might be that everyone else in your network can't understand it. They don't get it because they're different to you. They've got their own map of the world. So I think we have to remember that very often, if you want to step into this challenge and this change, it's a solo mission. It might be you on your own because your loved ones, your partners, your family, your friends, they've got their own map of the world, and their map of the world around alcohol might be very different to yours at the moment. So I think that's an important message to get across as well.
I think it is. And I think you have to recognize what you're going into, that it is solo, that there is going to be some soul searching, some discovery. But how would you suggest, Andy, those folks who are considering, just understanding the relationship with alcohol, whether it's a 30-day um, removal, the social pressures or sharing it with their friends and perhaps noticing that they're not getting phone calls to or invites to places they were. And so like how do you navigate that? Because I would imagine people and I don't even know if this is a demographic thing or what an age thing, but it's like maybe that inclusivity, that being part of something is going to trump the booth, and just saying like I can't imagine being my own, but at the same time I recognize that I could be better here. So there's like that conundrum that, so how do you help them navigate saying like, those weren't your friends to begin with the first place, or instead of, meeting in an environment of booze, can you suggest golf or rock climbing or something like that, that just doesn't put you in that situation to kind of have to have that conversation that you might not be prepared to have?
Brilliant question. There's a few bits to this. So there is the sort of straightforward answer, which is I think you start to adapt really quickly and realize that actually maybe some of the things that you thought you once enjoyed were only enjoyable because you're intoxicated. Is the truth of it, right? I could have happily, when I was drinking, stood in a bar or a pub in London for 6 hours and barely moved, right? And I felt at the time that I enjoyed that. When I stopped drinking and went back into that same environment, after 90 minutes, I was bored stiff. I had no interest in standing there for 6 hours. I had other things that I wanted to do. I wanted to go and get fit and healthy and connect in a completely different way, go home and see my family. So I think there's a bit of making peace with maybe some of the things that you thought once were enjoyable or not, because maybe they weren't ever enjoyable. And the only reason they were enjoyable or appeared to be was because you're intoxicated. I think we have to own that. In terms of not being invited to things, I think there is a little bit of that. I think there was a bit of a social readjustment in many ways. But again, that's a powerful, I think, insight and reflection for you to take on board. Do you still want to be in that social environment if the only reason they want you there is because it's all about, really, in truth, a veiled attempt of intoxication? Another important reflection. But equally, I will speak to that. I bumped into a friend of mine just recently who I inspired to take a year off alcohol. And he said to me that he's now drinking again on occasion because he evaluated the situation and realized that his moments to get with his really good friends did involve alcohol. So, therefore, back to your point earlier, his evaluation led him to conclude that whilst he now drinks a fraction of what he once did, and he's getting a lot of the great benefits, He still drinks on occasion because there's certain groups of friends that he wants to bond with in that way. It's very conscious, it's in awareness. And again, I think that's quite skillful on his part.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
another way to look at it, but you can't get there unless you take a break for long enough to really have a look at it for yourself and retrain yourself to socialize without it. And I'll give one more quick story if I can about this. Like we start to think we're missing out, but are we missing out? You know, there's that FOMO. Oh, my friends are still out and they're all connected and they're drinking and they're having an amazing time. And I'm missing out. So there's two things about FOMO. Right now, you could walk outside, it's summer. You could see a group of people drinking in the sunshine, laughing, having the most amazing time. Who's not to say they're all drinking alcohol free alternatives? Could happen. That's the difference. That's a game changer. But I'll give you one other example. I was in Ireland recently with my friends. So we do different things now. Instead of going to the pub, hiking, biking, climbing, when we go away for the weekend, they have drinks in the evening. I drink alcohol free. We went to a little island off the coast of Ireland. We arrived at 10:30 a.m. It was sheet rain. The only place open was a pub. 10:30 in the morning, we're in the pub. This is my worst nightmare. There's nothing else to do apart from drink. They'll start drinking. I'm sitting there like a plum. And fast forward 3 hours later, it's too late for them. The day's over. We were meant to be getting on a mountain bike to this beautiful Dunangus fort, this sort of spiritual fort. The sun comes out, and I'm like, well, I'm not drinking. So I'm going to go to this event we were supposed to go to. I couldn't tell the lads I was leaving because I would have got the classic, headlock, don't leave, we love you. So I just left. I had no idea where I was going, and I had no mountain bikes. I didn't even know where we were hiring them. So I just started walking. 6 hours later, after walking pretty much in solitude for the whole 6 hours, tiny island off the coast of Ireland, I arrive upon this Dunangus fort. I had to climb and clamber over some rocks to get into this place, which has this real spiritual aura around it. It's been there for thousands of years. And I was met with a sheer cliff face looking out into the Atlantic Ocean and the wind and the sea air. And I had what I would describe as a spiritual experience. I was connected to something bigger than oneself. It was probably one of the most powerful moments of my entire life. And as I walked back from that experience, and it took me again another 5 or 6 hours to get back, I arrived back at the same pub 12 hours later, so 10:30 at night. My friends were still in the same spot. And I had one of those beautiful sliding doors moment where I looked at that and thought, that would have been me. In my mind, I thought I was missing out. But what was I missing out on? The same old nonsense for 12 hours. But I had a lived experience of doing something different, and then in doing so had one of the most powerful experiences of my life. So what I realized in that moment is you're missing nothing. You're missing absolutely nothing, because whilst you're doing something else, you open up your world to the most incredible opportunities that wouldn't have been available to you because you would have been stuck still drinking, which you've probably done a million times like I had. So that's, I think, a good example of turning the fear of missing out into the joy of missing out.
What a great story. And I just wonder, Andy, how many, and I know we don't measure backwards, but like how many other opportunities like that are people missing or unaware that even exist because they are in the pub for 12 hours or whatever it is. And that sounded like it was transformational. It was a life altering story for you.
So true. And it's not even just it's those one or two glasses of wine. It's game over, isn't it? The whole night or the afternoon is finished on the back of a couple of glasses of wine. You're shut down mentally. Nothing exciting's going to happen. It's Netflix o'clock or whatever it looks like. I think so many people have fallen into that trap. There are equally moments when it might be that time, if you had energy because you're alcohol free, you go to a spin class, or you connect with a friend, or you meet the love of your life because you're not plonked in front of Netflix, with a glass of wine. I think there's so much more to this than meets the eyes. I think we have this cultural malaise at the moment where people are just stuck in this behaviors that are just not serving them in the way they think they're serving them.
Yeah. Well, you're not you're existing. You're not living. And I think, like you said, there's so much spontaneity. There's so because you're seeing a light. It's almost like someone turned on a light, and you're like, oh my god, that was there the whole time. Like I'm living through fog, and they've illuminated this whole other layer that's always been there, but you haven't seen it. And there's times that I'm talking to friends and people, and they'll say, "Oh," I'm like, "What about Sunday?" They're like, "Well, I got the wedding Saturday, so Sunday I'm going to be hungover, maybe Tuesday." And so people are scheduling in a lost day. And so just back what you said is, even as like forget a day, like that's a lost day you can't get back. But think about like even sprinkling a spin class in there, a walk, a hike, going to watch your kid's soccer game and being present. Like there's just magical moments that are awaiting that I feel people are just in that, not even denial, they're in just in the haze of it all. And if they could just take a step back, get some distance for it, they can realize, wow, there's so much more to life. Like it's someone opens the curtains and you just think this was there the whole time, but I have to be ready for it.
Yeah, so beautiful. And when you reflect upon it, and someone shared this with me, we have about, you know, it's 4,000, it's ridiculous, 4,000 weeks to live. And when I started to hear that, it was like, what? Where I am now at my age, 49, I've got 1,000 odd. Like when you start to look at it like that, life is so short and it's so precious. Imagine giving up a day or two, a week, or whatever that looks like, to hangovers, to absolute underperformance. Like, oh no, I'm not going to meet any friends. I'm not going to do anything on a Monday or a Tuesday because I'm going to be hungover from those few drinks on a Wednesday. So imagine the shortness of life that we're just making it shorter and shorter. So we're only having like one or two good days a week because of our relationship with alcohol. It's completely nuts. That is why my brain is like, why would I drink? It makes no sense. It's the killer of performance in every domain. It shrinks my life in every area, and it gives me less time on this planet fully optimized. I'm just not doing it. And I think there's so many people caught in the trap of unawareness that will never wake up from that, that will underperform their entire life because they'll drink their entire life with no conception that actually those couple of drinks, that middle lane drinking has put this lid, like not just a little bit of a lid, it could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% lid on top of the quality of their life. For me, I'm just not doing that.
Well, I would say that number is going to be less because you are your enthusiasm, your energy, and just your message that you're sharing on so many levels is definitely making an impact. So kudos to that. I feel that you know it's been there, done that. Like so many people, it's like, well, what it's like on one side. You've done it for 40, 30, 40, 50 years, but you've never seen the other side. Like aren't isn't there a bit of curiosity there to say like I just want to, hey, even if I dip my toe in and go back, but I want to just see what that's all about. Like there should be FOMO about looking over at the other side.
So true. And, doubling back to what this podcast is about, I would almost guarantee that every single person listening to this that's in a sales role, if they're a middle lane drinker, will sell more when they don't drink.
Hear that, folks?
There we go. There's a proper
And
bold
that
statement.
yeah.
There's a bold statement. So, and if people take on the challenge, see what you do, I would wager that almost everyone, without exception, will sell more when they don't drink because of the mental clarity and the consistency that they get and better mental health that they get from that as a middle lane drinker. Like when you think about that, that is a crazy statement to be able to make, isn't it? And I would stand behind that all day long. And I know it because I've seen it in my own life and I've trained so many incredible coaches and incredible brokers, which is a real, like, again, elite sales type of role, and everyone performs better when we don't drink.
And to build on that, a lot of salespeople now are looking for extra tech stack, training, coaching, all these things. But from what I'm hearing is, try removing this and just see, in addition to all the other resources available to you, see the impact. But let me ask you this, Andy, if you're inviting them to do that, what is a length of time that you would suggest starting with?
Make it short, 28 days, yeah, a month long. Yeah, I think 28 days, 4 weeks, it's a great place to start. Everyone's got 4 weeks. Like, again, think about that shortness of life. 4 weeks to run an experiment and see, does that work for you? See if anything I've said today works for you. Are you fitter, faster? Is your mental health better? Have you got more consistency, more time? Do you make more sales? There's a real binary figure if you're in a sales world that you can check. Is it up or is it down? And if it's up, what a massive piece of information you've just found there. So if you're, in 6 months' time, you're heading near a sales target and you're short of your target, you've got this like superpower in your back pocket. Remove the kryptonite, which is alcohol, and unleash your alcohol-free superpowers, and then smash it out the park. I mean, what an absolute gift that will be.
I love that. So, anyone listening, get that superpower out. Give it a shot. What do you have to lose? Give it a shot. 30 days. Everyone has 30 days. I would completely agree. And look at the results you'll yield. So, amazing. Andy, I want to thank you for everything you're doing, the movement, the visibility. And I feel like it's definitely making a difference. And, you're in the UK, this is Canada. And so, definitely there's cultural differences, but we're seeing the movement here as well. So, continue everything you're doing, and thank you for everything you're doing because it is making a difference.
And thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And hopefully that's inspired a couple of people. Do reach out. I'm on all the social medias on LinkedIn, and let me know how you're doing. Especially let me know if you've sold more. I'd be really interested.
Absolutely. Well, if people, and I imagine people are going to want to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, what is the best way for them to do that?
My website, andyramage.com. My coach training website is aretewaycoach.com, ARETE, waycoach.com. Social media, Andy Ramage Official on LinkedIn as Andy Ramage. I'm out and about pretty much every day, live or posting somewhere.
Okay. And your documentary, when is it coming out? When can we expect that?
All right, yeah. So the alcohol-free documentary in the hopefully early part of 2025. So balance of this year, we're filming. We've already banked some incredible interviews. It's really gaining momentum as we speak. Depends who picks it up, how big it gets. That might put a delay or it might speed it up. But yes, sometime in 2025. So sometimes next year, the documentary will be out as well, which would be cool.
Amazing. Looking forward to watching. Well, thank you again, Andy. Appreciate your time and everything you're doing for the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.